All right, so Acho, would the Eagles be signaling the season's over by benching Carson Wentz? Don't say look. I don't trust you.
Witness.
Right.
Bro, they would be signaling that it's over, but it's because it would, in fact, be over. Why in the world would you bench Carson Wentz before going into the toughest 3-4 game stretch of the season? Think about who they got to play, big bro. It does not make sense. Marcellus, here's what you don't understand. I guess you still think that this is Alabama or Oklahoma, and you can just bring in Jalen Hurts against Georgia in the SEC championship game, and he'll save the day. Or you can just bring in Tua against Georgia in the national championship game, and he'll save the day. That's not how it works, okay? Yeah. This isn't Kansas. This isn't Kansas State. This isn't Vanderbilt. Okay, you better play Seahawks. What you got to play? You got to play the Cardinals. Like, you better Saints. You got to play some dogs coming up. This is not what you want to do. If you were to bring in Carson right now, you wouldn't just be signaling that the season is over. You would be actually confirming that the season is, in fact, over. So, no, it doesn't make sense to do that. I'm glad Doug Peterson is coming out at the beginning of his post-game pressers and making it unequivocally clear exactly where he stands. Bringing in Jalen Hurts before playing the Seahawks, Packers, Saints, and Cardinals is not only ruining the Eagles, but it would probably also ruin Jalen Hurts.
I totally disagree with that. Let me just say in general, why do you bring in Jalen Hurts? Because it can't get worse at that position in terms of quarterback play. Being real, 31st in passer rating, can't get worse.
32 teams.
Hey, man, look, you know how much room there is above 31 versus how much is below 31? Like 1-2 dudes. You like include some dude who just came off the bench. 31st, 32nd in completion percentage. That means if Acho was right there, no one would throw the ball worse than me if I'm Carson Wentz. And someone told me to correct myself when I talk about Carson Wentz and call him by his correct name. Carson Wentz, because there ain't no W in his name. All L's. It's interesting looking at Carson Wentz. This dude is tripping. 31st in passing yards attempt. 5 more giveaways than any other player in NFL, including his backup. 3 more interceptions than any other player, including his backup in the NFL this season. More fumbles than any other player in the NFL this season, including his backup. That's why you put in Jalen Hurts. Let's get deeper into why you put in Jalen Hurts. But
I'd rather
besides
not.
the point,
I'd rather not,
it can't get worse.
I'm comfortable on the surface level.
What about, look, one thing I love about our relationship, look, we haven't hung out yet. It's a pandemic. We haven't really broke bread yet. It's a pandemic. We text. And on text, I'll be looking at the phone like, why are you texting me all the time? But then I respond, and you think we cool. That's the point. Here's the thing. If I'm in this situation, I need accountability. That's one thing I love about you. I can count on Acho. He's going to show up. He's going to show up prepared. He's going to say it with his chest, and he's going to come every single day. Despite having 1,000 other things going on, you're accountable. Where's the accountability on this team? Hey, coach, excuse me, Dougie Fresh. Yes, there's more than one player on this team. What happens when we mess up as other players not named Carson Wentz? We get benched. We deal with criticism. We don't get the full support of the organization just because you're tied to him in terms of money. I just think in the locker room, it can become cancerous to let somebody skate by, always get away with it, always get a pass, despite being at the bottom of the league at his position.
Let me push back because the Eagles have a low threshold of success right now. So now you have to kind of figure out what are you going to hold accountable. I didn't ask the statistician on the show. I ain't asked my dog Andy, but I know the Eagles. I've watched the games. I think, Marcellus, Carson Wentz is probably the only Eagles player on offense, only Eagles starter, that hasn't missed a snap all season.
Okay.
Think about this, because all the Eagles, Alshon has, Deshaun has, Rager has, Zach Ertz has, Dallas Goedert has, Miles Sanders has, Jason Peters has, Jason Kelsey got hurt last game, he has, Lane Johnson has. I'm only 2 people I haven't named are the guards, the right guard and the left guard. I think Carson Wentz is the only player that hasn't missed a snap. So at minimum, Sel, if you have told me on air, told the world before, the best ability is what?
Availability.
If you've come on air and said that the best ability is availability, then at a minimum, if you're going to knock Carson Wentz for all these things, let's at least say, hey, bro, you've been available. You've been out there. You've given us a chance. You have given us a chance. Sure, now we need to start to ask for more. But in a season where you got players missing games because of COVID, you got players missing games because of injury, Carson Wentz, you here. I can count on you to show up. Now I need you to do more with you here.
Man, I would love to have you at a teacher conference. Imagine, you ever been to one of those? Oh, you don't have any kids. No, you haven't. And the teacher sits there and says, you know what? Imagine this. Oh, your son, he comes to class every day. He's sitting there. He's studious. Oh, he's great. He's just dumb as hell. he gets F's on everything, but he shows up every day. So you know what? What shall we do with him?
Let me go here real quick.
What the hell?
Hey, look, sometimes the bar is low. I'm going to be honest. At the University of Texas,
that's called the floor. It's not a bar that's low. It's the floor.
At the University of Texas, wasn't Columbia. Here's what our academic counselors would early on say. I apologize, academic counselors. I'm putting your business on blast. If y'all show up and sit in the front row, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, that's real. That's everywhere. That's
like, if you show up and just sit in the front row,
that you care.
At a minimum, you'll have a chance to pass the class. Carson Wentz has showed up. Carson Wentz has sat in the front row. And at a minimum, sure, the minimum is only 3 games, but they're leading the division with a chance to pass the class. Well, let's bring in Bucky Brooks, because he showed up today.
Yes.
As NFL analyst. Bucky, should the Eagles be signaling the season is over? Or would they be signaling it's over by benching Carson Wentz?
It's a wrap.
There's so many things that I want to get into. Like, I was right here ready with a hip-hop quotable, but then you guys went into the academic space, and it made me think about John Wooden, what John Wooden would say. He would say, don't confuse activity with achievement. And what you're doing is you want to give Carson Wentz a blue ribbon just for being around. And I just don't understand that. The other thing that I would say, in being an old school hip-hop head, I think the old school guys would always talk about, what is this? Word is bond. And so when you're the head coach and you stand in front of the room and you talk about, we're going to play the best players and everyone needs to compete and don't worry about the numbers. If you're the guy that does all the things that we want to see, you will get an opportunity to get on the field. But then when we turn off the lights and we turn on the film and we're looking at number 11, give the ball away week after week after week after week and fail to complete passes at a consistent rate. But yet, every time we call out the ones, he runs out and goes into the huddle. It's no longer your bond. And so I understand the financial implications, but at some point when you're Doug Peterson and you're standing in front of the group, your words have to match up with your deeds. And if you continue to let Carson Wentz skate, you run the danger of losing the team because you're treating 52 players one way and one player a completely different way.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I got to stay in this lane right here because if I'm sitting in that locker room, I understand why you got to say all the right things supporting Carson Wentz. I understand why you're going to continue to put him out there as our starting quarterback because you're tied to him because of the money. But in certain situations, you can be penny wise but pound foolish. And in this situation, it's penny wise to try and get your return of investment into who Carson Wentz is. But the problem is everybody else sitting there like, this is foolish that you really think that he's our leader with this level of production, that he's really, let me get off that track. Let's talk about that level of production, because we saw yesterday him give up, 8-9 points yesterday, pick 6. One of his sacks was a safety end zone, so now we see him in that situation. But I want you guys all to take a collective breath and listen to this nugget. This is insane. This is how much Carson Wentz has regressed. His average quarterback rating last year, just like a normal day for Carson Wentz, was 93. That is higher than every single game he's played this year. I'm going to repeat that. His average last year is higher than every single game he's played this year. 10 games this brother has been last year better than what he's been this year. How do you explain that to the entire team, or at least have the audacity to go to the media, unless you want to look like Acho with that sad face? Come on.
Every year is different. Bucky, every year is different. What I love about this show, and let me talk to my dogs. Okay. What I love about this show is we get to talk to athletes for us, by us. Y'all remember FUBU? For us, by us.
And all that.
There's for athletes by athletes. No, and what y'all remember, in the game of football in the NFL, you got 16 games. And your coach will say every 4-game stretch is like a quarter. And so the 16 games divvied up into 4 different games, you're playing 4 quarters if you talk about it as the entirety of the season. Okay. The Eagles have currently played 10 games. So if you simply do the math, the Eagles are halfway through the 3rd quarter of the season. They're halfway through the 3rd quarter of the season, and they are currently winning the game. They're winning the NFC East. At a minimum, if you say every team has 3 wins, at a minimum, they're tied halfway through the 3rd quarter. On a micro scale, if your quarterback had you winning the game halfway through the 3rd quarter or tied halfway through the third quarter of a game of 4 quarters, you would never bench him. So now let's go macro. The Eagles, after 10 games, are winning the NFC East. If you don't want to say they're winning, then say they're tied. It makes no sense to bench a guy who has you winning or tied through 3.5 quarters of play, or 2.5 quarters of play.
So here's the thing, because we always talk about it being a quarterback-driven league. And so, Acho, you're right. We're talking about the NFC East, and the Eagles are right there. Everyone has 3 wins. But let's just do this exercise. Let's just go through and look at the quarterbacks that are currently playing in the NFC East, and let's just figure out where Carson Wentz will stack up. I have Daniel Jones, I have Alex Smith, and I have Andy Dalton. And in good faith,